In this video, I'm going to discuss to you the practice occupational safety and health. Let's start it with the hazards and risks. What is a hazard? A hazard is any source of potential damage, harm, or adverse health effects on something or someone under certain conditions at work. It can cause harm or adverse effects to individuals as health effects or to organizations as property or equipment losses. A hazard is referred to as being the actual harm or the health effect it caused rather than the hazard. For example, the disease tuberculosis might be called a hazard by some, but in general, the TB-causing bacteria would be considered the hazard or hazardous biological agent. What are examples of a hazard? General examples include any substance, material, process, practice, etc. that has the ability to cause harm or adverse health effect to a person under certain conditions. In this table, here are the examples of hazards and their effects. Workplace and hazards also include practices or conditions that release uncontrolled energy like an object that could fall from a height, potential or gravitational energy, a runaway chemical reaction, chemical energy, the release of compressed gas or steam, pressure, height, temperature, entanglement of hair or clothing in rotating equipment, kinetic energy, or contact with electrodes of a battery or capacitor, electrical energy. What is risk? It is the chance or probability that a person will be harmed or experience an adverse health effect if exposed to a hazard. It may also apply to situations with property or equipment loss. For example, the risk of developing cancer from smoking cigarettes could be expressed as cigarette smokers are 12 times, for example, more likely to die of lung cancer than non-smokers. What is a risk assessment? Risk assessment is the process where you identify hazards, analyze or evaluate the risk associated with the hazard, and determine appropriate ways to eliminate or control the hazard. There are types of hazard. Number 1. Chemical. It is any substance that can cause harm, primarily to people. Chemicals of all kinds are stored in our homes and can result in serious injuries if not properly handled. Household items such as bleach can result in harmful chlorine gas or hydrochloric acid if carelessly used. Gasoline fumes from containers for lawnmowers or boats can result in major health hazards if inhaled. Number 2. Electrical. A dangerous condition where a worker could make electrical contact with energized equipment or a conductor, and from which the person may sustain an injury from shock, and/or there is potential for the worker to receive an arc flash burn, thermal burn, or blast injury. Number 3. Ergonomic. Ergonomic hazards impact employers and workers and their families. Poor workplace design, awkward body mechanics or postures, repetitive movements, and other ergonomic hazards induce or contribute to a staggering number of cumulative trauma disorders. Cumulative trauma disorders, or CTD, affect hands, wrists, elbows, arms, shoulders, the lower back, and the cervical spine area. Structures involved include tendons, muscles, bones, nerves, and blood vessels. Number 4. Psychological. Psychosocial hazard has recently been acknowledged in legislation as a workplace hazard. This type of hazard relates to mental health and behavioral disorders. Number 5. Radiation describes the hazards of electromagnetic radiation to fuels, electronic hardware, ordnance, and personnel. In the military, these hazards are segregated as follows: hazards of electromagnetic radiation to personnel, or HERP; hazards of electromagnetic radiation to ordnance, or HERO; hazards of electromagnetic radiation to fuel, HERF. Number 6. Biological. A biological hazard or biohazard is anything coming from living organisms, pollen, fungi, animals, insects, bacteria, and viruses that could be a threat to someone's health. It is represented by this symbol. The biohazard symbol, which is used everywhere in the world. When people see this sign, they know to take precautions and to follow proper conduct for science labs. Number 7. Physical. Physical hazards are those substances which threaten your physical safety. The most common types of physical hazards are fire, explosion, chemical reactivity. Let's practice OSH in dressmaking. Pre-operational safety. First is to always check the sewing machine and its cord are in good working order. Number 2. Check all adjustments and settings carefully before commencing any sewing operation. Number 3. The workplace should be clean and free of equipment, rubbish, and other obstacles. Operating safety precautions. Number 1. Make sure all other students keep away from the workplace at all times. Number 2. One person only is to operate a sewing machine at any time. Number 3. Do not touch a sewing machine while another person is sewing. Number 4. Do not wear loose clothing, especially long sleeves and neckties. Number 5. Turn the power off when making adjustments to the sewing machine, such as changing the presser foot and needle. Number 6. Never raise the sewing machine at high speed. 7. Take care not to machine over pins. 8. Make sure the take-up lever is in the upper position before pulling out the fabric and cutting threads. 9. It is important to keep the machine as free of lift as possible. 10. Do not push or pull the fabric while sewing. Let the machine do the work. Your hands should guide the fabric without forcing it. Biological. Bacteria, viruses, insects, plants, birds, animals, and humans, etc. Chemical. Depends on the physical, chemical, and toxic properties of the chemical. Environment. The circumstances or conditions that surround one. Ergonomic. Repetitive movements, improper setup of workstation, etc. Exposure. The condition of being exposed, especially to severe weather or other forces of nature. Health. The overall condition of an organism at a given time. Industry. A specific branch of manufacture and trade. Injury. Damage or harm done to or suffered by a person or thing. Harmful. Causing or capable of causing harm. Obligations. The act of binding oneself by a social, legal, or moral tie. Physical. radiation, magnetic fields, pressure in screens, high pressure or vacuum, noise, etc. Protective, giving or capable of giving protection. Psychosocial, stress, violence, etc. Responsibility, the ability or authority to act or decide on one's own without supervision. Safety, freedom from danger or risk of injury. Textile, a cloth, especially one manufactured by weaving or knitting a fabric. Workplace, a place such as an office or factory where people are employed.